out of his way to, first he's like saying she connects to people, and he could have left it at that, I guess. But he almost goes on to put the, reverse some of that discourse, try to put it in others' laps, because Geno talked about Caitlin Clark again and sort of gave some backhanded compliments. Like, he talked about how she connects to the audience, which was good. He talked about how she's tough, like Paige Bueckers. He threw Paige in there.
Geno Auriemma just couldn't keep Caitlin Clark's name out of his mouth again. But this time, it wasn't the straightforward praise fans expected. It was a strange cocktail of compliments, laced with jabs that had the basketball world buzzing. First, he admits she connects with the audience like no other player, then immediately drags Paige Bueckers into the mix, as if to remind everyone he still controls the narrative. But here's the twist. This is the same Geno who once dismissed Caitlin outright, saying she didn't have the skill set to dominate, only to watch her transform Iowa into a national powerhouse, breaking records, packing arenas, rewriting the sport in real time, and leaving him on the outside looking in, losing millions, losing credibility, and losing the chance to be tied to the most marketable player of a generation. Now, every backhanded remark he makes only exposes the truth. Caitlin Clark isn't just rewriting the game, she's living rent-free in Geno's head, and he can't stand it. After being spurned by Caitlin Clark, Geno Auriemma, the legendary UConn coach who built his empire on recruiting dominance, now looks like a man scrambling to rewrite his own legacy, because while he once brushed Clark aside, claiming she didn't have the skill set to thrive in the WNBA, she went on to flip the script completely, turning Iowa into a powerhouse that shattered television ratings, packed arenas across the country, and shifted the spotlight of women's basketball onto her shoulders, leaving Geno with nothing but regret, real financial losses, and the painful reality that he missed the chance to attach his name to the most marketable superstar of this generation. And instead of owning that mistake outright, he now hides behind podcasts, tossing out half-hearted compliments, sneaky little jabs, and excuses that fans aren't buying. Because what they see isn't wisdom anymore. It's a coach who underestimated a generational player and is paying the price in full. Geno doubled down during a podcast appearance, tossing out comments that sounded less like thoughtful analysis and more like cheap digs. He started by saying Caitlin Clark connects with people, something so obvious it barely counts as insight. Then, in the very next breath, he undercut it by framing her trash talk as a problem. As if competitive fire isn't part of what makes basketball electric, instead of giving her full credit for her confidence and edge, he twisted the narrative to make it seem like the backlash from WNBA veterans was somehow her fault, ignoring the reality that her swagger and fearlessness are exactly what elevate her into a generational star. And while Geno keeps trying to control the conversation with these sly remarks, Caitlin just keeps winning, breaking barriers, and proving with every game that his criticisms don't hold up, leaving him looking more bitter with every word, while she turns the sport into a cultural phenomenon right in front of him. The real kicker is that Caitlin Clark isn't just stacking wins on the court. She's rewriting history in real time while living rent-free in Geno Auriemma's head, because every time he tries to downplay her rise, she goes out and proves him wrong in front of millions. And what makes it sting even more is that his miscalculation didn't just cost him a recruit, it cost him millions in ticket sales, television deals, and brand credibility, turning what could have been the crown jewel of his coaching resume into a constant reminder that he underestimated the wrong player. And now, as Clark elevates Iowa into a national phenomenon, Geno's legacy is taking hit after hit, with fans pointing out that his bitterness overshadows his brilliance. And the more he talks, the more obvious it becomes that he didn't just miss out on history, he missed out on the future of basketball itself. When pressed further, Geno tried to soften the edges by calling Clark fearless, comparing her to a kid in the driveway just playing for fun. But even that so-called compliment felt more like a swipe, because instead of celebrating her unique mindset, he pivoted right back to reminding everyone he's seen greatness before, as if to downplay that Clark is doing something brand new. Yet, the truth is, while most players overthink and crumble under the spotlight, Caitlin embraces the chaos, takes the shot, and thrives under pressure that would break others. That fearlessness is what separates her from the pack, but Geno couldn't bring himself to crown her greatness outright, because doing that would mean admitting the player he once rejected is now the face of the game he spent his life building. And that's a reality he still refuses to swallow. Geno couldn't resist dragging Paige Bueckers into the conversation, slipping her name in like a shield to remind everyone his stars still shine. But the truth is, bringing Paige up wasn't about respect, it was about deflection, a way to avoid admitting he flat out underestimated Caitlin Clark. And that's the fatal mistake, because Clark isn't just another talented guard, she's a different breed, entirely fearless, unapologetic, unshaken by pressure, the kind of athlete who doesn't flinch at criticism, doesn't fold under the spotlight, and doesn't care who doubts her. And every time Geno tries to put her in the same box as someone else, it only proves he's scrambling to control a narrative that's already slipped away. Because when it comes to Clark, the comparisons don't hold, the excuses don't land, and the truth is staring him in the face. He missed on the player who changed everything. When asked directly about Caitlin Clark's impact on the sport, Geno tried to downplay it again, acting like her rise was just another chapter in the game's natural evolution, instead of the driving force behind women's basketball exploding into mainstream popularity. He tossed out lines about how greatness isn't new and how he's seen it all before, but that's exactly the problem. Because while he frames it as business as usual, the reality is Caitlin Clark is anything but usual. She's a once-in-a-generation phenomenon whose influence has pulled millions of new fans into the sport. And by refusing to give her full credit, Geno doesn't come off as a seasoned legend. He comes off bitter and out of touch, clinging to his past while the future unfolds in front of him, led by the very player he said wasn't good enough. Geno's biggest blunder came when he tried to rope Caitlin Clark into his flashy new 3-on-3 league, a project hyped up with big investors and bold promises of a January launch that was supposed to revolutionize the game, but Clark wanted no part of it, flat out refusing to align with the same man who publicly doubted her. And that rejection sent shockwaves because without Clark, the league had no face, no magnet, no superstar to draw fans in, turning what was marketed as a groundbreaking idea into a sinking ship before it even left the dock. And instead of being remembered as a visionary businessman, Geno now looks like a desperate promoter scrambling to save an empty product, while fans roast him online, clowning him for ever thinking Clark would carry his banner after he dismissed her on national television, because she doesn't need his approval, doesn't need his league, and doesn't need to boost the reputation of a man who once minimized her talent, leaving him with fading hype, empty seats, and a legacy collapsing faster than the project he thought would cement his name in history. At the end of the day, Geno Auriemma thought he could control the narrative, but the truth is simple. He underestimated Caitlin Clark, and that mistake has cost him everything, because while he scrambles to rewrite history with half-hearted praise and backhanded excuses, Clark is rewriting the future of basketball with every game she plays, every record she breaks, and every fan she inspires. And the more Geno talks, the clearer it becomes that he's not just fighting Clark's success, he's fighting his own regret. Because instead of embracing the biggest star of a generation, he pushed her away, and now he's stuck watching from the sidelines as she takes the sport to heights he can't reach, proving once and for all that his era is fading fast while hers is only just beginning. In the end, what we're witnessing isn't just a clash between a legendary coach and a rising superstar, it's the passing of the torch, because while Geno Auriemma keeps talking in circles trying to protect his reputation, Caitlin Clark keeps rewriting the sport in real time, stacking records, commanding arenas, and dragging women's basketball into a new era of global attention. And every backhanded word Geno throws only makes it clearer that he's trapped in the past while Clark is building the future. So when history looks back, it won't remember the excuses or the comparisons or the missed chances. It will remember that Geno doubted her, and Caitlin Clark proved him wrong on the biggest stage, turning his regret into her legacy and cementing herself as the unstoppable force leading the game into heights it has never seen before. At the very core, this isn't just about Geno Auriemma making mistakes. It's about what happens when a coach who built his empire on control collides with a player who can't be controlled. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just rewriting box scores, she's rewriting the entire identity of women's basketball. And Geno's refusal to give her full credit doesn't slow her rise. It only highlights his fall. The more he tries to twist the story, the more obvious it becomes that Clark doesn't need his approval, she doesn't need his system, and she certainly doesn't need his league. She's already bigger than all of that. And while Geno's legacy fades into the background, hers is exploding into history, proving once and for all that the era of Caitlin Clark has arrived, and no amount of backhanded praise can stop it.